What do you do when God falls silent? When life demands a step into the unknown? Some silences cut deeper than 1,000 harsh words. Some waits stretch so long, they begin to erode the soul. And there are moments rare and brutal when everything you believe it is challenged by sheer emptiness. The heavens seemed mute, barred prayers unanswered, and time, relentless. Some answers don't come in words. Some paths don't reveal themselves before the first step is taken. Sometimes, direction only appears after the first yes. And there are moments when the soul screams, but the world remains silent. The silence outside only amplifies the turmoil within. This is not a story about blind faith. It's about quiet courage, about moving forward without certainty, about a man who accepted he couldn't control everything, but mastered himself. He didn't need to understand the plan. He only needed to trust the next step. Today, more than ever, we are tested in the unseen, by the chaos no one sees, by the waiting no one understands, by the fear no one respects. But what if the secret to peace lies in serene endurance, in the resolve to keep going, even when everything inside feels like it's crumbling? What if true maturity is precisely this? To act with nobility, even when the soul is in ruins. Courage doesn't shout, it persists. Stay until the end, because today's story won't just give you answers, it will remind you of your own forgotten strength. It will awaken in you an ancestral memory of who you are when the world falls apart. If you seek wisdom without noise, faith without dogma, courage with purpose, subscribe to this channel. Here, every story is a blade that carves silence and strength. Today, we uncover the Stoic message behind overcome inner chaos with Stoic courage. The Stoic journey of Abraham. Abraham was no adventurer chasing glory or conquest. He was a man already shaped by life, with roots deep in familiar soil, surrounded by family and the steady rhythm of daily habits. He had a history, possessions, responsibilities, and above all, a sense of stability few would willingly abandon. But at one point, when his soul had grown accustomed to the predictable order of existence, he heard something not with his ears, calling. It came without maps, guarantees, or detailed promises. There was no clear vision of the future, just the raw, direct instruction. Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. It was the kind of command that shatters reason's axis, a summons into the unknown, a demand to break away from everything stable, understandable, and safe. And yet, he went, not because he understood the plan, but because he understood the value of obeying what felt like truth, even when everything was shrouded in fog. Imagine leaving behind all you know, abandoning the comfort of routine, the weight of family ties, and setting out with nothing but a faith yet to materialize. Abraham carried no certainties, only a calling, and with it, his family, his servants, his livestock, his fears, his unanswered questions. He walked through foreign lands, among unknown peoples, like a man straddling two worlds, the visible, where everything seemed uncertain, and the invisible, where the promise dwelled. There was no haste, no heroics, just steady steps. His eyes couldn't see the destination, but his feet moved with resolve. Years passed, and the calling seemed deferred. Time stretched on, and the promise grew distant. Abraham aged, as did his wife Sarah. Her womb, dried by time, no longer held hope. Yet the promise lingered, silent, in the depths of his soul, until, almost ironically, it was fulfilled. A son came. Isaac was born. He was more than a son. He was a symbol of continuity, of legacy, of God's faithfulness. Life rearranged itself around him. Laughter returned to the tent. The old Abraham cradled the future he thought forgotten. And for a time, perhaps, he felt the cycle was finally complete. But then came the second calling. And this one didn't ask for a journey. It asked for something deeper. Surrender. Sacrifice your son as a burnt offering. The words were like a stone cast into still waters. The surface of his soul shattered. There was no rationalizing, no understanding. Why would God demand the very thing he had given? What sense was there in destroying the promise itself? Yet Abraham didn't argue, didn't complain, didn't question as he once had for Sodom. There was only silence heavy with pain, faith, and resolve. He simply rose early the next morning, gathered wood, saddled his donkey, took 2 servants, and called Isaac. The walk was slow, grueling, inward, each step a collision of love and obedience. The path to Mount Moriah was also a journey into himself. And it was here that Stoicism began to reveal itself, long before the philosophers put it into words. Abraham walked, but his heart was in pieces. The silence between father and son weighed like lead. At one point, Isaac, with the innocence of the pure, asked, "Father, we have the fire and wood, but where is the lamb for the sacrifice?" Abraham's gaze must have faltered, but his answer was the most stoic of all. God will provide. It wasn't an empty phrase. It was the essence of a life shaped by trust. He didn't know how or when, but there was a cosmic order, a higher reason he didn't need to control. And so, even without knowing the outcome, he pressed on. At the appointed place, Abraham built the altar, arranged the wood, bound his son, and laid Isaac upon it. The moment stretched like an eternal breath. He raised the knife, his hand from cowardice, but from the weight of love and sacrifice. His hesitation wasn't from doubt, but reverence. The universe seemed to pause. Time stopped. No sound, just the wind, and the heart of a man broken, steadfast, obedient. Then the voice echoed, "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know you fear God." Abraham lowered the knife, and as he looked up, he saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. The substitution, the release. The sacrifice didn't happen, but the soul was surrendered. The test wasn't about Isaac, it was about Abraham. He didn't leave the same man. His faith had been proven, but more than that, his serene courage, his self-mastery, his ability to surrender without despair. This story is, in its own way, deeply stoic, not because it rejects emotion, but because it contains it, not because it eliminates pain, but because it transforms it. Abraham didn't conquer fear, he moved through it. The test wasn't physical, it was moral, internal, and on that silent mountain, among stones and wood, a virtue was born, what the Stoics would call erit, excellence of soul. There's no glory in painless obedience, but there is wisdom in pain without despair. Life demanded everything from Abraham, and he did not break. He gave up what he loved most, and yet remained whole within, because his strength wasn't in his circumstances, but in the firmness of his character. This is not just a story about faith, it's a silent lesson in self-mastery, amid the unpredictable, a portrait of the human soul being called to stand firm, even when everything around it seems to crumble. Abraham did not try to manipulate fate. He demanded no explanations. He wasn't seeking to control the world, he was mastering himself. In Stoicism, this is the most fundamental divide. There are things that depend on us and things that do not. Abraham understood this intuitively. He had no power over the future, over the promise, over the logic of the divine plan, but he could choose how to respond, and he chose active silence, steadfast obedience, surrender without defiance. As Epictetus would say, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The command to sacrifice his son would, for many, be an unbearable blow, but Abraham did not let the absurdity of the situation corrupt his inner serenity. He did not ignore the pain, he moved through it. He did not deny the doubt, he bore it. With integrity, this is true freedom, to be greater than circumstance. The Stoic is not unfeeling, he feels, but he does not bend. Abraham trembled inside, yet he climbed the mountain. This is what Seneca would call obedience to universal reason, not out of cowardice, but virtue. Virtue is not passivity, it is discipline, the conscious choice to align with the greater flow of existence, even without fully understanding it. For the Stoics, there is a cosmic order, the Logos, that guides all things with wisdom. Spiritual maturity is born when we stop fighting this order and learn to walk with it, adjusting to the wind without losing stride. Marcus Aurelius, in his solitary meditations, wrote, "Accept serenely what is given to you, for even the burden has its place in the balance of the world." Abraham accepted, not as passive resignation, but as an expression of mature trust. He did not know the outcome, but he knew his part was to act with dignity, and that is all that is ever asked of us. This story is not about blind submission, it's about inner clarity, about being at peace with duty, even when the heart bleeds. Abraham's courage is the kind modernity has forgotten. Quiet, restrained, unspectacular, but unshakable as stone. This is the virtue of endurance, not of pride, but of maturity. Maturity is not understanding everything. It is remaining faithful even when nothing makes sense. It is climbing the mountain with pain on your shoulders, and still saying, God will provide. Perhaps, at its core, this is the essence of Stoic philosophy, not to live without pain, but to live with purpose, even in its midst. And in this, Abraham is not just a patriarch, he is a mirror, an archetype, of the man who stands firm, while the world collapses around him, and who, in the end, discovers his strength came not from victory, but from his ability to remain whole, when everything seemed ready to break, and you living in your own invisible prison, that space no one enters, yet where you remain every day trapped between what you feel and what you cannot express, between what you believe and what has yet to unfold. Perhaps on the surface, all seems orderly, but inside, the silence echoes, loud. There are questions you've carried in your chest for years, still unanswered. Have you ever tried to take a step, only to find the ground missing? Have you felt yourself in the middle of a crossing you didn't choose, moving forward only because stopping would hurt even more? Inner chaos is a battle that leaves no visible scars. It's the pain of uncertainty, of waiting, of lost control. It's living with faith in something yet to be revealed, and still keeping your feet steady on the path. How many times have you held the knife, not literal, but symbolic, the pain of letting go, the guilt consuming you, the doubt that keeps you from trusting tomorrow? And what do you do when the world expects you to smile, but your heart is on its knees? Who betrayed you, and you still haven't forgiven? Who made you a promise, and left without fulfilling it? What dreams have been placed on the altar of time, and to this day, you don't know if there were sacrifices or losses? Abraham's story is not about an extraordinary man, it's about an ordinary human, faced with extraordinary trials, and his response was not magical, nor grandiose. It was silent, it was steady, the firmness of one who understood that not all pain is punishment, and not all waiting is abandonment. Abraham teaches us that true courage, not in changing the world, but in standing firm even when the world changes against our will. Perhaps right now, you're on your own, Moriah, climbing an invisible mountain, carrying weights no one sees, trying to believe there's purpose in it all. And perhaps the silence that troubles you so much is not the absence of answers, but the sound of your preparation. How many times has life placed you before the unthinkable, only to show you later that you were stronger than you thought? Could the discomfort you feel today be not punishment, but discipline? Could this feeling of being lost be not confusion, but refinement? Sometimes, the waiting is the answer, and what you call a delay may be the construction of your inner structure. Stoic philosophy teaches that the soul is like iron. It must be forged in the heat of difficulty to become useful. And perhaps, like Abraham, you're being shaped in the unseen. No audience, no recognition, but deeply, are you willing to walk through this process with dignity, to climb the mountain without understanding, to remain steadfast even when doubt screams louder than faith? True strength is not proven in the absence of pain, but in the ability to endure it without corruption. Every day, you're being molded by something greater than you grasped. And while the world chases easy answers, perhaps your silence is becoming wisdom. Perhaps your waiting is transforming into virtue. Because, as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, what is in harmony with the nature of the universe is in harmony with me, and you are part of that. Even when everything seems misaligned, you are still on the path. The journey doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence, steady presence, honest presence. And sometimes, the greatest faith we can show us to keep walking, even when we don't know where it leads. The wise man does not choose the easiest path. He honors the path given to him, and turns it into an altar of virtue. It doesn't matter if the world around you seems to crumble. It doesn't matter if the answer hasn't come yet. It doesn't matter if your heart is heavy and your soul silently cries for direction. What matters is what you do with it. The true test is not the size of the challenge, but the greatness of your response. Abraham didn't know what would come next, but he knew who he chose to be. Even without guarantees, he didn't bargain with fear. He simply walked step by step, not because he saw the destination, but because he trusted the value of the journey. And that is where the wisdom of the great lies, not in controlling circumstances, but in mastering oneself. Even when everything around screams for despair, if this story has awakened something in you thought had long been dormant, if, in some way, you felt it touch truths within you, the ones no one else sees, then consider following this channel. Here, every story is an inner map. Every lesson, a mirror for the soul. We don't promise easy answers, but we offer questions that set you free. Stoic wisdom and unshakable faith meet here not as dogma but as open roads fare those who choose to live with purpose, even in the fog of uncertainty. And remember, with all the weight you carry, inner chaos only becomes unbearable when you forget the courage you hold in your chest. It's there. You just need to remember.